Hello there, welcome back to The Closet Historian and back to my sewing room for another crafting project today. Ever since I first started working on the Cicada gown project, I knew I would want to make some accessories to go with the various versions of the costume as well, including a hat that we may be making here on the channel soon. But today we're going to go ahead and make a custom folding fan to wear with this costume. And starting off with the cicada, the actual insect, as my inspiration for this, I went ahead and searched out some different depictions of cicada in decorative arts in general, looking at things like Art Nouveau jewelry and hair combs, but also things like Japanese lacquerwares were popping up. As for more Gothic-leaning Victorian hand fans, here are some antique examples I was looking at. I found a couple of examples in black silk or even a matte black, both mourning fans and just fans for regular use outside of the period of mourning, with these kind of almost asymmetric occasionally, but floral designs on a black background. So I felt justified in doing a black hand fan with a sort of asymmetric, naturalistic design based on the cicada motifs that I found. Now luckily I do have these hand fan blanks that I used to be able to find at Cost Plus World Market. It's a store here in the United States that has like decorative things and also like soaps and plates and world foods. It's kind of an interesting store. I'm not sure if they have them everywhere. I'm not even sure they still have these hand fans anymore, but you can probably find blanks like this on Etsy or eBay as well, various places online. Just a very simple little cheap fan, honestly. I think these were $3.99 back when I used to get them, and I have embellished a few fans like this before. Here's one that you've seen here on the channel. It briefly appeared in the Hufflepuff lookbook, but this is one I made in the past, much more Art Nouveau inspired, of course. But I haven't embellished a fan like this one in a little while, so today I thought I would go ahead and show you how I go about transforming these little cheap fans into something more special. I'll be using various kind of mixed media materials to transform this hand fan, including polymer clay, which I had never used before. So let's jump on in and I'll show you how I got on. Alright, so the first thing I wanted to do for this fan was to paint the raw bamboo sticks here black, because I wanted the whole base of this fan to be black. So I just carefully am going around and painting all of the fan sticks with some black acrylic craft paint and a little cheap paintbrush. I'm just trying to get in all the little nooks and crannies here, but I'm also sort of dry brushing a lot of this and like layering as need be, just so that I don't get too much paint on the fabric here. I don't want to get a ton of paint on the fabric, so you can see I was tapping off some of the paint on my brush just so I have just a little, as little paint as possible, I guess, on my brush while I'm painting the sticks up here over the fan leaf area where the fabric is, just because I don't want to get too much of this black paint on the fabric just yet, at least. I will be eventually painting this, but you know, with a design, not necessarily just around these fan sticks. But I'm painting the back right now and hoping that things don't bleed onto the front too much here. Again, it's black paint, so if the black shows on the black, it's not going to matter too much, but just doing my best to keep it on the bamboo really here. And I'm just painting the front of those sticks as well here, just again trying to like scooch the paint in between the sticks down here. You can take the pin, see how there's like a little pin next to my nail here that's holding the fan sticks together, where I'm holding the fan. You can take that pin out and, you know, move these sticks so you can get so you can see them fully and paint them if you would like to, but then of course you have to put the pin back in, and this is just a little plastic pin, so I'm not even sure if this one comes apart, but But I'm just painting all of that, including the guard sticks here on the ends. So I'm doing that here, making sure that any little bit of bamboo is painted black. And this is actually just matte black paint, but eventually I will be using a little bit of gloss in some areas to add a little bit of a glossy highlight to some areas of this fan. But just going through, touching up little areas, and then making sure everything is coated. And I just left that to dry. Now over here I've been experimenting with sculpting, which is not something I'm used to doing. But I'm just using Fimo Soft here, which is, I've never used, weirdly enough, I've never used polymer clay or Fimo before. But you kind of have to soften it up in your hands, so that's what I'm doing here. And you can see I've been playing around, making a couple of different things, and I'll show you the different techniques I used to make these little cicadas and the little like guard stick embellishment you see behind my hands here. But I'm just softening up this Fimo in my hand. I wasn't being super precious about like fuzzies getting stuck in my Fimo or anything like that. I knew I was going to be painting these things anyway, so whatever. But I was just experimenting for a couple hours, honestly, figuring out how to use polymer clay in general and how to make these little cicada dudes. So I'm starting off with a little slightly rounded, sort of a candy corn shape, if you know what Halloween candy corn are. Maybe they're just an American thing. I don't really know. But sort of a rounded triangle shape here, and then I'm going to make a little more, I guess, less long triangle, more obtuse triangle here to serve as its little head here. But I'm really just playing with this clay in my hand mostly here. Just creating a little dude, a little cicada guy. So we have two, like a triangle with a little bit of an oval on his head. And I'm just going to create an indent in between what eventually will be the eyes. It almost turns this into a bit of a heart shape here. I'm just using these. I just bought a couple of packs of cheap sculpting tools when I got the Fimo from Michaels. I just ordered this stuff online because, of course, trying not to shop in person as much as possible. But I'm just going to take a tiny, tiny little bit more of the clay and roll it into a tiny, tiny little ball. And just kind of squish that into a small, teeny, tiny oval. I'm using a bodkin, like a big needle, to help me place those because these little elements are really tiny at this point. I'm just making a very small little bug. I'm just placing those little ovals on top of the head as eyes. And then I use the end of that needle to draw lines across the body of my cicada. And then little lines going the other direction, just to make it look like almost like segmented body sections here on my little cicada friend. And then we can go ahead and just create this sort of like I don't know, it's like a scarf for the bug. I'm sure there's a technical bug name for when they have a scarf, as it were. But I'm just putting another little oval below the eyes, kind of connecting the head to the body here. This is very anatomically correct. I'm sure any entomologists or biologists watching can attest to that. We're doing an extremely accurate model here. And now I'm going to go ahead and roll out a little bit of the clay into like a thin situation so that I can cut the wings out of this. So you can see I'm just using a Crayola washable marker here as my rolling pin to roll out a little flat piece, which is how I did these other flat pieces you see here. So that little oval up at the top of the screen, I just cut that out of a flattened bit like this, and the same with that like fan stick shaped piece next to me. So I'll just cut that into a like teardrop shape first, upside down teardrop. Just cut off the point of that, split it down the middle, and then angled the ends. And that's kind of how I was doing the wing shape for my cicada wings here. You can see I'm just using the needle again to cut these and shape them. I'm just going to further shape these wings in my hand, sort of soften the edges a little bit, pinch out the wing a little bit longer, take a little bit of clay away where I want to. It's hard to explain how to do this. I'm basically just playing around. Again, this is the first time you're watching on screen now, the first day I've ever played with Fimo, so it's not like I'm an expert in any way. I'm just playing around with it and trying to get a feel for it, really. Again, using the needle to kind of place that on my little cicada body down here, patting it down, sticking it into place, hoping the Fimo sticks to itself, honestly. Same with the other little wing here. And I can just shape that and layer it on as well. Sorry if you can hear any other chatting in the background. I think there are meetings going on in the floor above me. And you know, as I always say, I'm in a basement, and the walls and ceilings, etc. are not the thickest. This is not a soundproof studio. But here I've got the other little wing on there. I'm just making sure that those wings are stuck down to the body so that when I bake this, it doesn't come apart. And just scooching the sides as need be. Playing with the little guy, adding a little bit of texture. And I started off making the big one, and then once I was happy with how I could get the big one to make sense to me and start looking like a cicada, like looking like I liked, I followed the same set of steps to create that little smaller one. So you can see I have 4 different sizes of this same little idea here. I'm just putting a little bit more detailing on these with this little tool, some little indentations and stuff, just so that it looks, I don't know, a little bit more like a cicada. Hopefully these look a little bit like they were like carved out of like horn or bone, or even like celluloid, or look like they're molded in brass or something like that by the time I'm done with them. It'd be fun to paint them to look almost like faux ivory maybe, or ebony, or even to like paint them to look like carved stone would be cool, but that is all some advanced nonsense. So to do this little, I guess, cartouche kind of thing up here on the top of this fan stick, which I'm smoothing out a little bit further here, I again just rolled out a piece flat, again using my Crayola rolling pin. Oh, here I'm going to make some spiders first also. I'm just taking little round pieces of clay and kind of flattening them out a little bit just to create some like spider bodies. So it's like a big abdomen and then a little head next to it, just because I figured I could glue a little spider body on somewhere and then draw the legs with paint. So I was just making some spiders here. But then I will show you how I made this little like nameplate is kind of what I'm using it for. I'm just going to put my initials on there, which turned out okay. I could have made this a little bit better shaped to receive initials, like that round one there at the top. I feel like I could easily put like a big B or like a BE, which are my initials, on there, but it worked out, I think, okay. And now the way I did the rope around that oval up there is to create a little tiny rope by like, how do you describe what I'm doing here? Like creating a little snake rope out of the clay here. So I'm just rolling it into this thin little rope. Sorry, my voice is going. And I just wrapped that around the oval, but I also used the same kind of stuff to create the little initial plate. So I'll show you that now. This is a technique, in particular, this right here, what I'm about to show you, I learned from Christine McConnell in one of her videos where she was using polymer clay to mold switch plates for her light switches in her house, or her old house, I suppose. But she was showing how to make those light switch plates, which looked a lot like the same shape, only much larger than this, because this is like doing it on a tiny miniature scale, because, you know, I like to inflict pain upon myself, I suppose. Anyway, so I have my little shape here, and I'm going to use the little rope-like edge and then just slice it off. I'm just going around kind of piping this like you would like when frosting a cookie or a cake. I'm kind of like piping around the top of this using my thin little rope of clay. So you can see, just attaching it at the corners, tapping it on to hoping that it sticks, which it kind of does. I'm just tapping that on there. And then again, each of these little sort of spider webby-ish swoops, like so. Sort of sticking those on there. Needed a little bit more here. There we go. Alright, and then to like make it smooth on the inside, you kind of just squish the inside edge. It's hard to describe and not easy to see. I'm trying to find which tool I want to do this with. They had these little silicone tools, but actually the wood ones were better and cheaper, so these are just really cheap little sculpting tools from Michael's. Again, but I'm just kind of like squishing the inside of that round rope down into the flat base, just to create like a slope, so that it just looks like it's curved up along the edges. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just pushing down the inside edge of the rope to kind of gradate it down to the flat area. Just gentle pressure doing this, because of course you press too hard and you will totally indent the clay. And then also Christine McConnell recommended using a paintbrush and some rubbing alcohol, so that's what I have here. And if you just rub over the surface of the clay, it kind of dissolves it a little bit and helps smooth everything out. So that's what I was attempting to do here as well. It worked, I would say, about as 50% as well as I wanted it to. I wished it had worked a little bit better. If you like brush the alcohol onto the clay and like go work on another area and then come back and then brush over it again, it kind of gives it time to dissolve a bit, which helped, I think, too, a little. I'm sure there are many people out there who are like polymer clay experts and are like, oh my god, your technique. Yes. Again, I never used it before, so yeah, it was all experimentation this day. I am just doing this on a piece of wax paper, by the way, that's just sitting on my table to protect my table, and also just so that I could whack the wax paper onto a baking sheet and throw this in the oven without having to move anything. So that was my plan there, and I was hoping that would work, and in the end, it did. So that was good. I was glad that it worked out. I'm just smoothing everything out in this little tiny little guy. Eventually I end up making another one of those little spider bodies and putting it onto this little plate here. That's what I'm doing now. This is actually just sitting here on my desk now because I haven't used it for anything yet. But it could be pretty, I think these little embellishments like this would be pretty on like boxes as well. Or you could make it like a long thin box to put your fan in, because that's how fans were packaged actually, usually in boxes. So it'd be fun to make a custom fan box to keep the fan in. That's an idea. Could be something fun to do in the future, perhaps. I do like crafting in general. So I'm just going to go ahead and tear off the excess of this wax paper. I'm putting my tools away here. I'm reading, how long am I supposed to bake this? And at what temperature? I think I wanted to be cautious, so I baked it at 320. I think it recommended like 350 or something. No, not 350. Sorry, like 220. I think I baked this at like 220 degrees Fahrenheit, that is, just on a cookie sheet for 30 minutes. All right, and now out of the oven, it worked. I was very pleased and surprised. They are still a little bit flexible, which is nice because you don't want these kind of things to be too brittle or they might break easily, I suppose. So here are my little cicadas all baked up and ready to go. I wasn't exactly sure which of these things I wanted to use. I did end up using this sort of plate version, but again, you just, roll out a piece, cut it into a rectangle, and stick on the other embellishments, basically. But I decided I wanted to go ahead and paint this black. So that's what I was going to do here. I should have painted the bits that I wanted gold first before doing this, but you will discover and see how that worked out for me as we go along here. But I had never painted polymer clay and didn't know if it would work or what paints I would need or anything like that. But I had, again, craft acrylics sitting around, and so that is what I used. So I'm just using my regular cheap crafty acrylic here. Just trying to paint around the areas that I know I want to paint gold instead. I'm going to be just using a gold metallic, again, craft paint. You could probably get really fancy with something like this and use gold leaf, which would create like a very shiny and precious effect in the end. I've never experimented with gold leaf. I would love to play with that sometime. It's a material I have never used. Now for all these little guys, let's go ahead and start painting them gold. I'm just imagining what this would look like on the fan, by the way, here. I have my dried fan sitting here, so I can go ahead and start playing with these, seeing what they would look like on the fan sticks, seeing which ones of these I want to use. Alright, so here I am just using the needle to hold those in place and starting to paint them gold. I should have painted these golden yellow first and then put gold over it, or painted them red first and put gold over it, which is the traditional way of doing gold, kind of like painting like this. But, I didn't think that far ahead when I was doing these. I'll keep that in mind for later, you'll notice. But this gold paint is quite transparent, so you have to do a lot of coats to build up to opacity. But if you were to put like a flat, non-metallic gold color underneath, or painted these yellow first, then it would take less coats. But here we are, time to put another coat on. I think this is at 2 coats here, but you gotta just keep layering up all the different coats. And you can see I'm painting the gold onto the black and gold embellishment there at the top too, which meant I got gold all over the black, so I'm gonna have to repaint the black and blah blah blah. You get the idea. Oh, time for another coat. Just many coats of this, waiting for each one to dry in between here. Still on that same piece of wax paper from before. Painting all these nice and shiny metallic gold. I really like this gold paint, actually. It's got like a little bit of glitter in it, but not too much. It's like a very fine glitter. Looks like gold dust, but not in like a incredibly tacky way, which would be easy to do. But it's got a really nice shine to it for not having any actual gold in it, Many, many coats. Probably like 5 coats on all this gold. Again, should have painted it opaque gold first before putting the metallic on top. And look how messy this thing's getting. So I'm going to have to paint black over again after all that gold, messy gold. But here, after these guys are dry, look at that. Fun. Almost looks like cast metal, right? Sure. A little bit of paint on the extra edges here. Just folding that off. Seeing how these would look on the black. Black and gold together. I always like, well, black with any color. Who are we kidding? But black with metallics is always a fun contrast. My spiders are stuck on here. Let's see. So you can just like glue these down and then draw the legs on, You know what I'm saying. I didn't end up using these spiders this time. And I have my little, again, cartouche, as I said earlier, which is fun. You could do like a little cameo on this if you were really talented, but I am not used to sculpting, so that is beyond my purview. Certainly. Time to go ahead and fix this one up and paint black over the areas where I had gotten really messy. And now I'm trying to be very careful and not get black on the gold. Honestly. Now, of course, you could do additional like decorations on this kind of stuff. Like you could embed rhinestones in the clay. I'm not sure if you can do that before or after they bake, but you could always like make the indentation for them, bake the clay, and then glue the rhinestones in afterwards, or glue flat back rhinestones on these. I've used flat back rhinestones on my fan sticks before. And again, people are walking around above us and stomping around, so I apologize for that. Alas, one day I will have a studio that is not in my family's basement, and therefore I will be able to control the sound but it is not this day, you know? I'm just using like simple, cheap, multi-pack paintbrushes for this, by the way. I don't really have a lot of nice paintbrushes lying around. Alright, there we go. Let's see how that's going to look on there. Fun. Now I'm trying to decide if I want to add any gloss varnish on any parts of this. Of course, the inspiration for doing the black and gold kind of like this were the Japanese lacquerware pieces I was looking at, which I just find lacquer arts, boxes, inrows, anything really, so pretty that I was thinking maybe I'll add some gloss on this so I can have that nice high gloss finish. Of course, it won't be as smooth as lacquer. Here I'm just antiquing one of these, so I'm just using a watered down black paint, painting over the cicada and then brushing most of it away. So that's how you can create a more like antique brass or like, you know, slightly dirty look to these. So it looks a lot older, like it's been collecting grime for years. Now this one looks a little bit more like perhaps a brass stamping or something like that, or cast brass or something. I'm just going to highlight the highest bits with a little bit more gold after that wash of antiquing. So anything where like the piece would have been brushed by hands and stuff like that over time, you want those to be the shiniest bits. And then of course all the deep nooks and crannies are where you want the black paint to rest in. And it's easy enough to get it down there. You just put it on there and then wash it off. You just saw. Antiquing things is actually rather fun. Making things look grimy. Alright, I'm just going to set this gloss aside and start cleaning up my workspace here so I can start to go ahead and get the design onto the fan itself now that it's dry with its black base coat, as it were, here. So I've got all my fan sticks painted dark, and I can go ahead and start to transfer my design onto the fan leaf. The way I'm going to do this is to use this mechanical pencil here. So I have a little sketch of what I want to kind of do here, sort of a central little motif plaque in the middle of the fan, and then spider webs surrounding it and behind it. And those will be quite easy to do in the end, you'll see. But for this portion, I'm just going ahead and drawing on the fan. Now, drawing on a fan is not exactly as easy as drawing on, say, paper, because of course you're drawing on fabric and there's those fan sticks kind of in the way. So you do have to be careful while you're drawing this and take your time and kind of adjust around the lumps and bumps of this sort of thing. But here I'm just drawing the little plaque in the middle, sort of a, you know, bat wing, spider web inspired floopy little design here in the middle. And I'm just going to have a tree branch with a cicada sitting on it in here. And then I will do some leaves and stuff, filling in the other space around that, the negative space here. Wasn't exactly sure if I wanted to do the background behind the tree gold or do the tree gold at this point, but that is a decision I can make later. And then I'm just going to go ahead and draw in some asymmetric, random spiderweb-ish designs here. So I'm just penciling those in where I want them, trying to keep my lines as straight as possible, again, while working on this, you know, kind of pleated surface, pleated and semi-raised surface. But just sketching on here with pencil. You can erase on this fabric as well. You just have to do so gently and carefully, because if you rub too hard on fabric, it will pill, which you may have noticed with your clothing. That's why pilling happens on the surface of fabric. It's because friction against fabric will move the fibers out of the weave, and then they'll pill up on the surface. So that's kind of how pilling works. But here I'm just drawing in my spider webs. You know, spider webs, luckily, for how cool they look, not very hard to draw, you know? You just kind of draw your swoopy swoops. So that is what I'm doing here. Alright, so now I can go ahead and start painting on my fan here. Now again, just like how drawing on a fan is different than drawing on paper, painting on a fan is different than painting on paper or canvas or anything like that. So I am just using regular, boring old craft acrylic here and a small little cheap paintbrush, and I'm just going to go ahead and start laying down the base layer here. I'm just only filling in the area that I will eventually be painting gold, actually. I've learned my lesson. If I'm going to paint an area gold, I'm going to paint it this raw sienna color first to get opacity, and then I'll just use one nice layer of that sheer gold paint over it, and you will see how remarkable it is. How well the gold paint works if you paint something opaque gold underneath it. Much better idea doing it this way. So here I am, I'm just painting on this fabric. Of course, this paint is soaking into the fabric. You wouldn't want to use, like, say, watercolor, or at least not on a dark colored fan like this, because it will not show up. So that's why I'm using acrylic paint, and I'm not watering it down at all. I'm just using it straight kind of from the bottle here so that it's opaque enough to get coverage on here, but it is going to soak into this fabric and I will have to put another layer on here to reach full opacity, really. So you have to layer paints up when doing it on the fabric like this. And it will bleed through, as you see here, so I'm just wiping that off my table so I don't get it anywhere I don't want it. So I am just being cautious, knowing that the paint is soaking through this fabric. Luckily it doesn't bleed very much, at least this craft acrylic doesn't, and so that's useful because, of course, I want to keep it inside the lines, as it were. But here I am just applying my second coat so I can reach some nice opacity on my tree here before I eventually paint it gold in the end. And you can see the fabric here, again, being fabric and not paper, is not, it's like slightly see-through, it's slightly transparent. So I'm going to use that to my advantage when designing this. So all of the opaque areas obviously will no longer be see-through. So I'm going to actually use black paint on this for areas that I no longer want to have that same transparency. For this little cicada in the center, I will paint its body black with black paint, but leave the wings just the black fabric, and that way the wings are technically a little bit more transparent than the body is in the end. It's a very subtle difference, but you know, if you were watching or paying very close attention while you're watching me use this hand fan or have it in my hands, you may be able to notice the wings are slightly more transparent than the body of the cicada will be in the end here. But here mostly I'm just mixing up some green paint because for some reason, of all the little tubes of acrylic paint that I have down here, which is a great many, I don't have any dark green. So I was trying to mix a sort of emerald-ish green color to use for this. It turned out kind of teal, but whatever, it's gonna work just fine for my purpose today. So I just mixed up a tealish color and then mixed some of that with black to get this kind of sludgy pond scum sort of color. And then I will go ahead and use that as the background behind my tree branch here. And then again, I'm just painting, leaving the leaves blank for now because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do with them yet. So I'm just leaving them blank, painting in my little plaque design around the leaves. Basically painting in the background here. And again, this will need 2 coats because it is going to soak in here and not be fully opaque until I add another coat. Of course, I do feel bad about this part of the tutorial where it's like, just go ahead and draw and then paint, which is like, you know, it's not like I'm providing a pattern or anything like that. I guess I could do like a printable pattern for this little motif if you would like, so let me know in the comments below if you would like something like that or like that kind of thing in the future. I've never really done or like scanned my drawings and done printables or anything like that, but I suppose I could figure out how to do so in the future if that's something you would like. But it seems a little rude to be like, and now paint. I did that earlier, I guess, and go ahead and now sculpt. But my sculpting skills are very limited personally, so I'm just adding a little bit of detail onto these green leaves. I decided I needed to go with green. This is very like Bob Ross Happy Leaves situation where I'm just tapping on a little bit of lighter color very like loosely and quickly, not being very precious about this at all. Just using a little bit of a lighter green as an accent to add some texture in there. And then I'm going to find a very fine brush and add in some more like stems and grasses and sort of like dotted on flowers, which you will see here. But just really simple, trying not to go too overboard. I think I might have overdone it just a little bit here, but you know, it's easy to get carried away when doing this kind of nonsense. This kind of work does make me think, like I would love to get better at doing miniature flowers and stuff like that, almost like, you know, painting porcelain would be. I think in one of my like jobs in the past I wouldn't have minded having painting porcelain. Just painting cute cups day after day after day. We all know I would be a peasant of some kind, but that sounds better than farming to me, so I wouldn't mind sitting there and painting porcelain. I suppose it was probably a lot worse at the time than I think it was. It sounds very quaint, you know, sitting and painting porcelain all day. But I'm sure in the 18th century was anything truly actually quaint, you know? It was probably not the best conditions in reality. Anyway, how depressing. And on that sad note, here I am painting in the gold over the now dry tree branch here. You can see how well, this is just that same exact gold paint I was using earlier on the polymer clay, but it just works so much better when you put a nice base layer underneath it. And then here I'm painting in the body of the cicada with just some black acrylic paint as well. Again, just so I can have a little bit of a difference in texture between the body and the wings, if not color. So I'm just using a difference of finish almost, as opposed to having it be a different color. I'm using like a limited color palette for this project, I suppose. Just really gold, silver, black, green, and I guess like yellow and white, technically, slightly. But mostly the metallics with a little bit of a green accent. Now I'm just taking some white paint and really throwing in some highlights, almost like little flowers on these little grass stems, I suppose. Again, very easy to go overboard here. I'm on the verge. It feels a little bit like doing nail art, but only probably because I used to do like very botanical nail art back in the day. And now I never wear nail polish at all. So, you know, I used to love doing nail art, and now I never do my nails. And like, I don't want to, interestingly enough. Here I am finally using some of that glossy top coat here. So I'm just putting that gloss coat over the section I painted black in the center of the cicada here. And this is actually because of the cicada specimens I have now, because I actually own some real, albeit dead, cicada, framed like a true creepy Victorian. They look shiny. So of the cicada that I have, they all have shiny black bodies, and so I decided to go for that for this one on my fan as well. And then here I am just painting that glossy top coat over the guard stick here on the end as well. And I'll do the other guard stick too. So just painting a little glossy top coat over that. As this dries, I'm just adding another coat kind of on top of it. I want a nice thick coat on here. Of course, I'm not going to be able to get it nice and shiny. How nice it would be to have... I wonder if they probably have Japanese hand fans that have lacquered, like properly lacquered guard sticks. Japanese hand fans are very beautiful, by the way. Of course, folding hand fans like this came from China and Japan originally, I suppose. Probably China originally over to the West. Although hand fans have been used in Western fashion for a very, very, very long time. Long before the Victorian era, when I'm slightly setting this fan in. This is more of like a fantasy fan, and then it will be born with the Victorian costume. But again, that costume isn't 100% accurate either. I'm all about having fun and making it pretty, as opposed to making it 100% accurate, as we know. But here I am. I've begun to sequin this fan. And now I really am just taking a single thread with a knot on the end of it, so I can have a knot on the back here. And I'm just sewing sequins on by hand, one by one. I'm not sure if you could do something. You could do something like this with tambour embroidery if you were working on the leaf before it was on the sticks, I suppose. One day I'll show you tambour embroidery. It's very fun, but I don't have a chance often to do it because I don't really have the best frames for doing it. Not embroidery hoops necessarily. I have an embroidery hoop, but you can only do such a big, not a very big piece in an embroidery hoop. I'd love to have a full-sized frame so I could tambour embroider an entire 1920s dress. Talk about a dream project. That would take a while, though. That would be like a slow update video of like, I've done another 3-inch section over here. It would be hard to document that one. It'd probably take me at least like a year to like hand bead an entire dress. Maybe one day, if I ever get the proper loom for such a thing. But here I'm just sewing these on by hand. No special technique going on here. Just coming like up through the last sequin, putting another sequin on my needle. I guess I don't know what the technique would be called for this. I'll try and link it. But I'm just stitching them on, honestly. And all the way around the outside of this little central plaque with my cicada in it. I'm just using a flat gold sequin for this. I think these are a size 3 sequin, technically. I actually prefer flat sequins in general, as opposed to cupped sequins. Cupped sequins are a little more sparkly, but flat sequins seem a little classier. I don't know why that is. That could just be me, probably. But that's just my opinion, you know? My sequin opinion. You know, those are the most controversial ones. Your opinions on sequins. Anyway, all the way around that little motif, just hand stitch those babies on. Just again, using one single bit of thread and a lot of patience. And here I am just erasing some of my pencil marks that are still on my cicada. Again, being very gentle here so I don't pill the fabric, but I can still get rid of my pencil marks on there. And you can see the difference of the fabric wings and the glossy body now. And I'm going to go ahead and start adding more detail into this fan, but not with paint, not with a paint pen, but with a very small paint pen. And by that I mean gel pens. These are Sakura Jelly Roll gel pens that I'll be using to completely detail this fan, basically. Here I am adding the details to the cicada himself. I was inspired by some of the cicada artwork I saw and jewelry I saw that had nice contrasting wing veins, I suppose, in metallics. And so I was using the gold gel pen here. The only problem with this gold gel pen is that it's much more of a muted gold as opposed to the very yellow gold that my tree is, for example, here. So to blend the two together, I ended up outlining the tree, so it has a nice crispy outline, and then adding on some veining or like bark detail to the tree with this gel pen, so it has the same kind of color. It helped blend the gold in a little bit more. And then for all the spider webbing, to trace over all my sketched in spider webs, I'm using a silver gel pen from that same company. Again, this is just a Sakura Jelly Roll gel pen that I picked up again from Michael's online. And I'm just going to go over all my spider webs that I drew on here. I'm kind of like going over each line a few times so it has full saturation. You could go over this again and it would probably turn out a lot shinier if you did that. Of course, depending on what kind of gel pens you have to have something that will go over dark fabric once again if you're doing it over dark fabric. If you have a pale leafed fan, you could use probably almost anything on it. You could probably even use Prismacolors. I don't know how much they would bleed, but it would be probably possible. But I found that metallic gel pens tend to work for this kind of work quite well. Look, they work for this work. Listen, my apologies. But I'm just going over all my spider webs like so. And once my silver spider webs were drawn on, I decided to go ahead and accent those with a few more sequins. This time I'm just using silver sequins. I have size 2 sequins here, which are absolutely tiny. And then I have another size 3 here in a silvery-ish color. The larger sequins actually I'm using for this kind of dewdrop effect here on the spider webs. We know how I like a dewdrop spider web, or a crystal spider web here on this channel after I made that necklace last year. But I'm just kind of trying to create the idea of dewdrops on these snowflakes with these sequins, but the sequins I didn't have the right sizes in silver, so I'm using a silver-ish color, but I think it worked out just fine. It's mostly about catching the light a little bit, and I'm not doing a ton of sequining here. I'm just choosing a few select places on each spiderweb and adding on a few little spangles, like so. And with that, my fan leaf is finished, essentially. So I can go ahead and add on my polymer clay accents to my guard sticks now that they're glossy and dried. Here I am just manually sort of closing and folding the hand fan for the first time since it's been painted. You kind of have to like squeeze the folds back into it, depending on how much paint you've added on there. But now I can glue this little guy here on the end so that my guard stick is nice and pretty. I'm just taking a jewelry file here. These are just like small metal files to rough up the back of the polymer clay piece a little bit and then rough up where it will be glued on, just so that it has a little bit more grip. I am just going to use E6000 for this, so I'm just going to put a big glob down the center of this guy and position it where I want it, and then I will have to leave this to dry for like at least 24 hours with all that E6000 in there. So leave that to dry, and eventually when it's dry I'll be able to add this little one on the other side as well, just so that the other guard stick is also pretty. And then lastly, for this fan, now that it's finished, you can see I even signed and dated it, or initialed it there. I'm just going to loop a tassel through the fan here. Now, back in the day, they used to have a different sort of pin that held the sticks together for these tassels to hang from, but this will work for now. A lot of fans you'll see have remnants of tassels as opposed to their full tassel anymore, but this is a new one, so we can tassel away. And my fan is now finished. Here is my finished hand fan with its nice, subtly sparkling spider webs, and I'm very happy with how it came out. I hope you all enjoyed today's project, and I will see you back here real soon. Bye.